Good boy. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. I love the way that the dahlias are starting to come out and you get this rhythm of colour regularly moving down in their pots, which then contrasts against the more anarchic colour in the borders here in the jewel garden. Of course, the bulk of the plants here at Longmeadow are grown in borders, but containers are really important, and never more so than at this time of year. This week, whatever you grow in your pots, be it ornate or edible, I've got tips to keep them flourishing all summer long.
It's wonderful.
Carol helps new gardeners Dan and Dom in Stroud make the most of their patio.
I think this is just looking brilliant.
And we visit one gardener who has containers to thank for a whole new passion in her life.
If I didn't have containers and raised beds and pots in my garden, I wouldn't be able to do it at all. I think containers are definitely the way to go.
Come on, come with me. One of the great things about pots is the choice it gives you. So, for example, here in the top greenhouse, we've now got a permanent display of decorative plants based on pelargoniums. Now, for years and years, we've grown pelargoniums here at Longmeadow, stored them in the winter in a greenhouse to protect them, and then put them outside as soon as the weather is good enough. And the display varies hugely depending on the weather. But now that they can stay in the greenhouse, the display is fantastic. It's consistent. And because the South African plants, they like lots of light, they'll cope with heat perfectly well, and then they just perform and perform. Whereas underneath the staging in the corner, the streptocarpus, also South African, but like in very different conditions to the pelargonium, they like warmth, moist shade. And tucked in under the staging, out of the sun, they're completely happy. And because we've got them in pots, we can adapt to the conditions. So by using containers and pots really well, you can expand the choices in your garden. Of course, not all the plants that spend their winter in the greenhouse spend the summer there too. It means that we can bring them out. And so you have the citrus, the lemons and the oranges, the same with lavender. In fact, two types of lavender. The lavender angustifolia is quite hardy, and that will cope with the cold here, but not the wet. Whereas the lavender stoicus, that is a bit more tender and needs to come in. Now, there are times when containers form a kind of protective, practical role. This mint, it's grown in a galvanized container, doing very well, but the main purpose of the container here is not for the mint, it's to protect other plants, because mint is a thug. There are a couple of considerations if you grow anything in any kind of pot. The first is watering, and the second is feeding. Now, stashed away, because it smells so vile, is some comfrey feed and some nettle feed that I made a month ago. And I made these by stuffing the buckets full of nettles in one and comfrey in the other and topping them up with water and leaving them to decompose. Nettle feed is high in nitrogen, which is very good for encouraging a leafy, strong plant in the beginning of the year. But comfrey feed is high in potassium, which is fantastic for encouraging the development of flowers and fruits. So once you've got your strong plant, then you want maximum number of flowers which will become fruits, and that's where the comfrey feed comes in. So we'll put the nettle feed to one side for the moment and concentrate on the comfrey. So we need to dilute this. And I've got a watering can here. If you're feeding once a week, 20 to 1. It's plenty strong enough. Give it a stir and get in out the rain to water your plants. I'm going to give these chilies a feed like that. And the reason why these are nice, healthy plants is because they've had a weekly nettle feed from April through to mid-June. But now, with the flowers here and the fruits forming, they're ready for comfrey. And likewise the tomatoes. Now, obviously, this applies to any plant in a container that's bearing fruit of any kind. If you don't make your own, you can buy very good proprietary tomato feeds, which are good general purpose for all fruits, and liquid seaweed is very good too. For both watering and feeding, it's better to use rainwater if you can. Certain plants, like camellias or carnivorous plants, really must be watered with rainwater. That means collecting it. Now, water butts are great. Open containers, like this old cattle trough, have the great advantage that you can dip into them. And it means that you can fill a fairly large watering can in the time it takes to turn a tap on. Now, Carol has been visiting Dan and Dom over the course of this year, helping them out as they develop their new garden. And this week, she's guiding them in growing plants in containers on their new patio.
Dan and Dom have spent the past few months working hard to create a lovely family garden. With the summer in full swing, it's blooming. Their veg patch, which we tackled on my last visit, is flourishing, and they've been enjoying the fruits of their labour. One of the final areas to tackle is the patio next to the house. Dan's made a brilliant start, fixing the walls, making beds with sleepers and creating a deck. But with a party imminent, they want it to look its best. So I've taken Dan to the garden centre to get some seasonal colour. Because today we're going to be planting summer pots. I think this terrace is just looking brilliant.
I know, it looks good, doesn't it?
Just like everybody's patios or terraces, you've got one area that's in sun most of the day, and you've got definite, defined shade. So I think it's a great idea if we plant these pots so they're appropriate. Let's have something like this big pot here as the centrepiece of your sunny bit. Right, let's get cracking. Now, this is sort of multi-purpose compost. It's only got to last for the summer, and it's got enough nutrients to do that. So let's start with the canna. Loves the sun.
Yep.
Everything should be just under the surface of the pot. Don't plant things deep down here because they can't see the light or anything. Now, dahlias are fabulous plants. They're from Mexico, so they're tropical. One of the things you must remember to do is deadhead. Keep on doing that all the time. You get masses more flowers. And then if you've got something to sort of fill in, how about these osteospermums around the edge?
So we can put even more in then?
Oh, cram it all in.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But you want something that's draping over side. Now, this lantana, you see it all over the Canary Isles.
Yeah, the flowers on these are absolutely stunning.
When you're creating a pot like this, there's a certain element of flower ranging.
Yeah.
And how about a coleus?
Yeah.
This is a plant you grow for its foliage. It'll do equally well in sun or shade. So it's a plant that we could use in your shady pot as well. We'll give this a really good drench when we've finished everything.
Yep.
Shall we do the shady one?
Yeah.
These are new pots on the terracotta, but they've been soaked thoroughly, and it's really vital that you do that. Because they're porous, if you haven't soaked them, they'll pull all the water out of your compost on your plants. Choose something for your centrepiece.
Coleus in the middle.
It's fantastic.
That one's been well watered. I've got the pot. So more compost around the edge. I've got some over here. Now, all these plants are things that are going to thrive in the shade. They'll flourish, in fact. I mean, there are a limited number of plants you can use in shade. Begonias are a really good choice.
Yeah.
I'm angling this out a bit, is that right?
Oh, it's perfect, yes. And I think this Nicotiana would go brilliantly well with it, do you?
Yeah.
And they hardly need pressing in, do they? Because the level's just about right. We need a trailer now, don't we?
Yep.
And, I mean, there are all sorts of things you could use. You could have ivy, or fuchsias are really great shade plants.
I like the colours of the bacopa.
You can already see their habit, so they're going to drape themselves right over the top of your pots. I think that looks pretty good, don't you?
I think it looks great.
And it'll just go on improving. Now, are you going to stand it down on your
Yeah.
gravel? Ready? I think you really do need little groups of pots. You know, this should be a cluster, a colony.
So if you're going to go off and do some more pots, I'll probably go and start firing up the pizza oven.
Earlier in the year, we rescued a thyme. We layered a few little pieces too, and now we want to see if they've succeeded. It's done brilliantly, hasn't it?
Yes,
It really has. It's flowered like mad, but I want to see what's happened underneath here. Look, these little layers really look like they've worked. Look at that. Really good root system. That's fantastic. I think you ought to pot these up. But don't you think it'd be nice if we just fill this with different herbs?
That would be lovely.
So we're going to top all this up with this. It's just your topsoil.
Right.
It's not particularly rich. Obvious choices are things like lavender,
Lovely.
and that's a sage. Now this is the one that's ideal for his pizza. Yeah, it's marjoram.
Lovely.
So oregano. The only other thing was a chamomile.
Yeah.
It should be a nice random kind of arrangement, so it just looks like a chunk of Mediterranean hillside.
They really haven't they, yeah.
I think we'd better go and get ready for this party. Should we take a bit of marjoram with us? I mean, there's things like this in here.
I'll bring it.
Now that Dan and Dom's garden is a growing success, the thing to do is to plan for the future. And that's just what we're going to be doing next time.
Any food that you grow yourself always tastes better than anything you can buy. And you don't need a garden to do that. If you use a container, you can grow something to eat on a windowsill, in a porch, on a roof garden, on a balcony, perfectly well. All you need is a container of some kind with drainage holes. Drainage holes, by the way, are absolutely essential. Get some compost. Just a normal peat-free compost will do the job perfectly well. You don't need to add anything special to it. Spread it smooth. Then buy a packet of salad seeds. You can either use a cut-and-come-again variety, or you can get mixes. This is a mix called salad bowl, and it's a variety of leaves. And sprinkle them on the surface. Now, the key to this is don't be tempted to sow too thickly. So one packet of seeds like this will do 10 bowls of that size. And ideally, you would run 2 or 3 bowls and sow them at 2-week intervals. And you could keep these going for months, as long as you keep them watered and give them plenty of light. That's it. The easiest gardening you'll ever do. Now, even if you don't grow salad in bowls, here's some jobs you can be doing this weekend. Sweet peas can produce a steady flow of fresh flowers all summer if you prevent them from going to seed. The best way to do this is to cut them all regularly. I've found about every 10 days is ideal. And if you miss a few, remove the seed pods as soon as you see them. Heavy rain, let alone summer storms, can wreak havoc in a border. So check your supports, adding new ones where you think necessary. I use homemade metal ones, but anything will do the job, as long as you follow the golden rule to provide support before the plant needs rescuing. It's time to cut your losses on autumn-sown broad beans. Pull up the plants and harvest whatever pods you have, and this will create space for another crop to follow them. Brassicas are ideal because they enjoy the nitrogen left in the soil by the beans. Can I? This area of the garden, which used to be our dumping ground, has been redeveloped. So we've got an embryonic wildflower meadow on the top layer, which is coming into being, and made a terrace. And I've moved the big pots that used to be in the jewel garden along the front, and now it's time to plant them up. Now, obviously, we've put a hard surface on this area as a place to sit. It's a sun trap. But also, it means that it's brilliant for pots of all kinds. Now, these big plots need a big statement, and I want to use them for topiary. And the plant that I've chosen for all four is perhaps a little bit unusual. Hawthorn is a native that is used by the thousands of miles as agricultural hedging. But I don't think it's really appreciated enough as a garden plant. It has endless virtues. It's got lovely flowers in spring. It's got superb berries in autumn. It's very easy to grow, very adaptable. It's cheap to buy. Birds love it. Insects love it. It can be clipped tight as a hedge, or I'm going to clip it as topiary. So I think it will be a perfect plant for these pots. I'm going to use soil, partly to give it bulk, partly to save using expensive compost, which are only accessed by the top 12 inches or so of the feeding roots, and also because hawthorn will be very happy in good Herefordshire soil. You could just buy a peat-free general-purpose compost, and that would be fine for the first few months. But if it's permanent planting, buy a John Innes No. 3 type bag of compost. If you can, add a little bit extra. Leaf mould, garden compost, and a bit of grit. And that will help the texture and the nutrition. And as with any plant where the roots are growing up inside the pot, just gently tease them. You're not trying to pull them out. What you're doing is breaking them to stimulate new growth. Before I add any more, I'm going to add the companion plants that I'm going to plant underneath it. And I've decided, keeping with the wildflower meadow theme and keeping with native plants, to add a grass. This is one of the most common grasses in the British Isles. It's called Discampsia cepitosa, and I've grown it from seed. So if I just put 4 round each of these 4 hawthorns, they'll soon fill out. What I like about this is I'm going to make a dramatic display, and the tree is about the cheapest tree of this size you could possibly buy, and the plants underneath, pence. If you underplant it, to a certain extent, you're taking nutrients and water away from the main plant. I think as long as you're prepared to water it regularly and perhaps feed it, that's not something to worry about. Now, of course, the next thing to do is give these a really good soak, and they will need watering regularly for the rest of their lives. But it won't take long with these hawthorns to get the mushroom shape I want. There's a mushroom sitting on a bare, clean trunk. Now, I guess that when people are planting up pots, whatever they're putting in them, the first consideration is just that they're beautiful, and they want them to look as attractive as possible. But as Nikki Preston shows us in her garden in Peterborough, that whatever your needs, they have incredible flexibility too.
I'm passionate about my garden. I'm definitely a flower girl. Bright colours, I love pink. I'll put any colours together. At the moment, I think the favourite thing for me is the alströmerias, because they've really done well this year. The orange lily, the vibrant colour of that is incredible. I've always loved fuchsias. I just love the way they look like little ballet dancers. And the dianthus, because they just smell gorgeous. The other things that I really love are the echiums, which I lovingly cared for 4 years, and that's the first time they flowered. Gardening for me is very new. James and I, my husband, we moved here 4 years ago. It was the first house we bought together. And the garden was much bigger than both of us had ever had before anyway, but it was very green, quite uninspiring. James really wasn't that bothered, so I had to take up that challenge and just learn fast and get to grips with it. And everything's led on from there. Being in the garden makes me feel normal. It's a rubbish word to use, but I can't think of any other way of doing it. Your garden doesn't judge you. Your garden doesn't look at you and go, you look a bit strange. I can just be me, and I can just lose myself completely in the garden, and I don't have to worry about not having hands and fingers the same as everybody else. Having a disability definitely makes gardening harder, definitely makes it harder, but it makes you more inventive as well. The trowels and forks that I have are actually children-sized ones, so they're lighter, but they're proper tools. They're not the little plastic ones that break. I'm quite resourceful, and I don't let anything faze me, definitely not. This raised bed is definitely my favourite raised bed because I can reach all the way around it. I don't have to stretch too far because although this arm's longer than this one, I have to be able to reach with both hands because I do everything with two hands. I can't garden at ground level because I can't get off the floor. If I didn't have containers and raised beds and pots in my garden, I wouldn't be able to do it at all. James and I work really well as a team in the garden. He doesn't mind following me around and kind of just picking up after me as I'm flinging stuff as I go. And he concentrates on all the bigger things that I couldn't do, like mowing the lawn, digging things if they need to be dug, building the raised beds for me, carrying the compost bags, and I concentrate on where the plants are going to go.
I'm so impressed with what Nikki's managed to do and what she's turned this garden into since we moved in. It's difficult to put it into words, really, how impressed I am with what she's achieved. I think the raised beds have given us both a greater enjoyment of gardening because it makes everything so much easier and it makes gardening a joy and not a chore. There's nothing I like more than when Nikki comes up with a problem and we can both sit down together and work out how we can solve this. And then by hook or by crook, we usually get to where we want to be.
I love hanging baskets in the garden because they're really a good injection of colour and really brighten everything up on the patio. But with James working away during the week, I couldn't water them. I can't lift a watering can, and they would just wilt and die. And then we came up with the solution for the watering system in the trolley with a water pressure. And then I just have to press the little button down and it pretty much does it for me, really. The biggest thing that gardening's given me that I never ever thought would be a new job, really, becoming a garden writer for several magazines. It has just given me a whole new lease of life to be able to write about the thing that I really love. When I end up in a wheelchair, which will definitely happen, there's no two ways about that, we will just adapt the garden to cope. I'll never stop gardening because it gives me a reason to get out of bed in the morning. Having a disability, it does make it difficult, but you just have to give it a little bit of thought. And, you know, if I can garden with 2 fingers, I think anybody can garden with 10.
Come on, come on. Well, Nikki is showing that whatever your circumstances, you can make a beautiful garden, especially if you use containers in a really creative way. And it's funny it's raining because actually I want to do some potting in the pond, although not necessarily in the pouring rain. And to do that, you use a very particular type of pot. Most pots, especially if they're lovely terracotta pots, are designed to look beautiful. An aquatic pot is designed not to be seen and has a particular function, which is to let the water in from the outside and to let roots out. So it's a basket, essentially. Now, when you're planting any aquatic plant, whether it's a marginal or a deep water one, you need to use aquatic compost. Normal garden compost won't do the job. And I've got a little bit left over here. And its main feature is it's very low in nutrients. I've got a ranunculus here, ranunculus flammula, which you can see has got small buttercup flowers that will spread in a very loose way, will work well in a wildlife pond. And it's a marginal plant, so it will sit just underneath the water. And the reason why you use a low nutrient compost is because you don't want to increase the general nutrition level of the pond, because the plants that will flourish most will be the weeds, which in the pond's case mean that the surface can be coated in weed, and you get all sorts of problems. Most aquatic plants get all the nutrients they need from the water alone. So the compost, the soil, is solely acting to anchor the roots. And you can see I've got a bare root plant here. When you buy a bare root plant, it is worth just checking to see that there's no weed attached to it. And the easiest way to do that is just rinse it under a tap. And then just bury them. Right, this needs soaking outside and planting outside. There is a theme here, I'm gonna get wet. I'm wet already, I'm going in a pond. I might as well do it. Hi, Nige. I filled this trug with water from the pond, and all I have to do is just soak this in it for a few minutes so that it's really saturated before I plant it. Right, that should have absorbed enough water to hold it in place. Now the soil has really compacted down, which means that it gives me room to put a layer of grit over the top, which will just hold it in place. The grit stops the soil floating away and effectively polluting the water. So all I have to do is just plonk it in the water. Right, this is all slippery, and the chances of falling in are high. Right, I'm going to pop this down, just lower it into the water so it sits on the bottom. Now that will grow and spread not very far, about 1 foot, 2 foot at the most. And of course, all the plants in the pond here, every single one is in a container. This is a container garden, just as much as if it was on a patio. And it looks as natural and as established as though it had grown itself out of the soil and the water. Well, that's it for now. I'll see you back here at Longmeadow next time. Until then, bye-bye. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Well, having been to shows and been away, it's nice to get back here and spend some time in my own garden. Well, I've been away, of course, the garden's been busy. It's all changed. We all inherit garden features that we have to work with. But this week, Joe visits a fashion designer whose Somerset garden incorporates a whopper.
Boom. That's a big, big viaduct. When you have a garden, what are the things you dream of? Well, could I have a river through it? But viaduct?
And Carol is in Kent, meeting a lavender expert whose walled garden is exclusively devoted to this essential plant.
To be honest, whatever lavender you grow, it's great for the garden, brilliant for the body, and superb for the soul.
It's just such a brilliant garden plant.
The dual garden colour theme is one that we try and keep going from early spring on into May and June, high summer, and on into autumn. And although we put a lot of effort and energy into maximizing the intensity of color, it's always surprising. Even though we've been doing this now for about 16, 17 years, just how it takes off once you get to mid-July. It really starts to explode. It used to be said that August was a low time for gardens. People went away on holiday because the garden didn't look up to much. It was tired. Well, I think that's baloney. There's no need for that at all. In fact, August here in the Jewel Garden is the best month of all. But you do have to tweak the garden a bit to get that effect, because some plants finish their performance in June and July, and then they do slump. So the secret is to cut them back, and cut them back hard. For example, this geranium finished flowering middle of June. I cut it right back to the ground. It looked terrible, really stark and bare for a few weeks, but now you can see there's regrowth. It's even flowering again, and it will go on flowering right through into autumn. And the point is, this new growth is fresh and it's vibrant. So as well as adding in plants, you do need to cut back where it's appropriate. Now, if I've got it in here, here's a delphinium, which was looking fantastic. Intense sapphire colour, but that's done its stuff. However, if I cut this back to the ground, taking everything off, there's a real chance that it will regrow and reflower in late August, September. It's not guaranteed, but there's a high probability. And even if it doesn't flower, there'll be fresh growth. And that's how you keep August going, adding a few bits and pieces in, but also cutting back to allow a sense of renewal and freshness rather than everything getting a little bit faded. So, down to the ground. Now, cutting back will definitely help, but sometimes you can add something to the garden which really transforms it and gives it a whole new life and energy. Now this is some plant. This is Ensete ventricosa morellii. It's a banana, the Abyssinian banana, and the morellii is the variety that gives us this fabulous plum colour to the ribs of the leaves and then along the edges and the veins. I saw it on the Britain in Bloom garden at Hampton Court and thought this is exactly what I need for this particular spot here in the Jewel Garden, where I cut down a weeping pear last year. And of course the colour is ideal because we use purple a lot anyway, and it will pick up the canna leaves. And so you get that rhythm of repeated shape and colour. Now it is big and it was expensive. This cost 90 quid, but it should last for years. It was my birthday, and if I was planting this in June, then I could get one that would cost about £30, which would grow just as big. So it's to do with timing as much as anything else. Ensete is a particularly tender banana. If you grow Musa baju is the most common one. They are hardier, they'll take some frost, and if you live in a sheltered area, you can overwinter them. The danger we have here at Longmeadow is not so much the cold, because you can wrap them with straw and fleece, it's the wet. The cold and the wet can rot them, and that's happened to me here before in this garden. So before the first frost, I will have to dig it up and bring it in and keep it under cover. I could grow it in a pot, but by putting it in the ground, the roots will spread and it will grow bigger. Right, that hole is deeper than it need be because I'm going to add some compost. I would stress that this is rich, heavy clay loam, perfect for bananas. So I don't need a huge amount of extra compost. If you've got light soil, chalky, sandy, whatever, add as much compost or manure as you possibly can. The banana will appreciate it. That's as good Longmeadow compost. Right, I hope I've got the hole the right depth because this is heavy. Well, that's not bad. How about that? Now what I'm going to do, because it's dry, is I'm going to fill the hole full of water, let it soak in, backfill it, and then water it again. So much of real life gardening is tinkering. You're just adjusting this and adjusting that. So when occasionally you do add something which is really dramatic and really stops you in your tracks, then that's a red letter day. That's really good fun. Now, years ago, I worked in the fashion business and kept coming across this man called Roger Saul. Very successful, very nice man, ran a company called Mulberry, and I'm delighted to say that Roger has become a gardener. And Joe went down to see his garden.
When you take over a garden, you often inherit a structure or feature that you have to embrace and incorporate into the design. But very few of us are confronted with something as large as this, a Grade 2 listed viaduct. When Roger Saul moved here nearly 20 years ago, he not only had to incorporate this disused railway into the garden layout, he also set himself the challenge of creating structure within the garden which would work throughout the year. So Roger, what did you think when you first saw this incredibly dominant viaduct?
I literally came round the corner and then it was boom. That's a big, big viaduct and it's a huge lake. And if you think of it, when you have a garden, what are the things you dream of? Well, could I have a river through it? But a viaduct?
And that is, I mean, it's such a dominant structure that in a way you can't soften it too much. It's there to stay.
Anything softening would have to be about 30 metres tall to have any effect.
Yeah, but actually, well, you don't want to soften it, do you? Because it draws the eye through the arches really nicely to the beautiful countryside beyond, but it's almost like a brick wall at the same time. It creates more of a sense of enclosure in this garden than I would have thought, but on a vast scale.
Yeah. No, you know, I think I've probably got one of the biggest sculptures in any garden in the world.
The current garden design is based around a very ornate rockery which dates back to the 1960s. The then owner was so enthused by a gold medal winning garden he saw at the Chelsea Flower Show that he commissioned a grander version to be planted at Kilver Court. It is absolutely classic, but to some it must feel very dated.
Wearing my fashion design hat, of course, obviously, every season's got to move on, and last season is rubbish, and, you know, you've got to keep moving on.
Yeah, because there's a lot of fashion in gardening too.
Exactly. To me, the rockery garden here, Chelsea gold medal winning, point in time in 1960, it is probably one of the most important gardens, I would think, left in the country that still has its shape and form.
Have you ever been tempted to really meddle with it at all? I mean, absolutely, you know, let's get rid of it, let's do something modern, something different here at all?
Only when a Sunday Times journalist once said to me, oh, this is boring, it's out of date. And I was trying to go, no, but it's a beautiful thing in its own right. Why would you change it?
You've convinced me completely. I can see that it is a design classic. The structure of the planting, for a start, you know, we've got the lovely upright junipers and the yews and the form of the plants and the contrast in the winter. It must really look fantastic too.
It does, because of course you've got all the shape of the rocks and the conifers. It's slightly starker, but it's still very exciting.
With the serrata stigma just cascading down over the front of that rock, that is absolutely beautiful planting. But you really play on scale, and you can play on scale here because you've got the huge viaduct in the background which sort of sets the tone of the scale.
So probably if you had this rock garden without the viaduct, it would seem massive, but the viaduct takes it back into context again, doesn't it? So, Joe, this is probably my little imprint on the garden.
This is the bit that you've actually got your hands on. that you could change. This lovely formal parterre. I think it's absolutely beautiful, actually. So where did the inspiration for this parterre garden come from?
Well, as a fashion designer, I spent a lot of time in the 80s and the 90s over in Paris. That's where I first saw this amazing army museum gardens, which is called, I think, Muséum de l'Armée. And they had these amazing, huge shell shapes of box and yew hedging and topiary. And I just thought, I'd love to do that one day. And that just sprang back in mind when I first came here. I thought, what could I do to give this a formal entrance? So I tried to make it very simple, 2 roses only. And we've got...
They're beautiful, the roses, aren't they? Is that Gertrude Jekyll, the pink one?
Gertrude Jekyll, the pink one, exactly. And it's a very fragrant rose.
And it smells absolutely gorgeous. And the blue one?
Blue one's called Blue for You, and I had meant it to be slightly bluer or purpler, if you like, in a sense, but it's fine.
You've got the viaduct, you've got the lake, got the rock garden, and now your stamp.
You've got different bits that really chart the history of this site. And along comes little Rog and says, what am I going to do to make my fashion imprint? So I just really thought this parterre, it's not, you know, it's not a huge, great thing, but it's a very important part of the whole. And I must say, I felt terribly relieved, having done it, that it worked.
When I first came into this garden this morning, I honestly didn't know how I felt about it. Did I like it or didn't I? It felt a bit dated to me. But having spent a day here and talking to Roger, I now completely get it. I realised that as a garden designer and many gardeners, we go in sometimes too early and rip elements out of a garden. We want to stamp our mark on it. So hold back, think about it, because you might be getting rid of a design classic.
Now, I'm harvesting shallots, and you'll notice I'm not just yanking them out the ground, I'm lifting them with a fork. That's important because I don't want to damage the basal plate that goes from the bulb to the root. So essentially, keep the roots attached, and they will store a lot better. So ease them out the ground with a fork, which is not difficult. They're not in securely. And you can see that these shallots have still got some green in the leaves. So they're still growing a little bit, but the leaves are dying back, and that's a pretty good sign that the bulb is ready. You could leave it until the foliage has completely died back, and in fact this is exactly the same as if you're growing daffodils. The foliage dies back, which means all the goodness has gone into the bulb. But I don't think they're going to grow much more. I don't mind if they're small, and I want to use the bed for something else. So I've chosen this moment as being an acceptable compromise between losing a little bit of growth, but they're pretty much ready. I'm a fan of shallots. They're tasty. There are lots of different varieties. They store much better than onions, and they're just as easy to grow. And these look small, but they're fine. They're good. Now this gives me a free bed, and I am going to plant these French beans that I've grown in a seed tray into this bed. But it's a very hot day today, and at this time of year it's a bad idea to plant anything out until late afternoon. In the midday you're just going to put it in there, and it's going to really suffer under the sun. So I would suggest planting everything, if at all possible, after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You've got a long stretch of about 12 to 18 hours of cool weather before the heat picks up again the next day, and that gives them a fighting chance. So I'm going to put those to one side and plant them this evening. I've got here some of last year's shallots, which is still very edible. When they're properly dry and the skin is all papery and brown, just put them in baskets in a cool, dark place, and they store really well. I've also got here the elephant garlic that I harvested a few weeks ago. You can see that they are a fantastic size. What's interesting about elephant garlic is that although it's so big, it's actually quite subtle. Makes fantastic pesto. You can roast the heads whole. Now you can see the skin on these is beginning to get papery. And if you're using garlic of any kind, you can dig it and keep it in the fridge for 2 to 3 weeks and use it fresh. If you're going to store it at all, you do need to dry it until the outside skin is dry and papery, and that can take 6 to 8 weeks. These will last for about 4 or 5 months. Not as long as some conventional garlic, and certainly not as long as any shallot. And the way I'm going to dry these is outside, but with a special bit of kit. Now, it couldn't be more homemade if you tried, but all I've got is an old sieve, a few bits of stick banged in the ground, rested on it, reasonably level, reasonably secure. And the beauty of this is that they're in the sun, they'll dry, but if it rains, they will drain very, very fast and they won't remain wet, and the airflow is under and around them. And I've done this in the past with chicken wire and onions, and they can sit on that for weeks. And it doesn't matter what the weather is. Or I'll put the label in, like that, and that's it. Now, the lavender here in the dry garden is very nice, but it's not representative of the garden at all. It's the only place that we can get lavender to grow at all well here at Longmeadow. It doesn't like our wet, heavy soil. But Carol has been to visit a garden in Kent, where it not only grows well, but it completely fills the whole of a large wall garden.
Lavender has been cultivated for more than 2,500 years. For centuries, in many households, it was the essential flower. And recently, it's really come to the forefront in our gardens. Simon Charlesworth is the country's leading lavender expert. His extensive knowledge of this genus has placed him at the forefront of lavender breeding worldwide, creating plants that have revolutionised the market. His work has been central in putting lavenders back into our hearts, minds and gardens. It seems like a daft question, but why lavender?
I think it's just a wonderful, quintessentially English plant. Brilliant scent, great for humans, great antiseptic and anaesthetic properties, brilliant for wildlife, of course. Bees love lavender.
But doesn't it put some insects off too?
Moths and midges don't like the camphoraceous scent of lavender, so pop some lavender grains in a bag and into your wardrobe, squeeze it every couple of months, and you'll find that it'll ward off the moss.
Yeah, and you'll enjoy it too.
Yeah.
But I think the main reason has to be it's just such a brilliant garden plant.
It's cracking.
I suppose this is what you call English lavender, isn't it? This is what you think of.
Yeah, this is an angustifolia, or true lavender. And this particular variety is Folgate, and at dusk and dawn, the colour of this is almost ultraviolet. It leaps off the plant.
Yeah.
They would naturally grow very high up in the mountains of Provence. Very, very poor soil, very resilient. They'll withstand -15 easily.
This one's beautiful too, but it's only just coming out.
Yeah, this is an intermedia called Sussex. So this flowers about 3 weeks after the shorter angustifolias, and it's a hybrid between an angustifolia and one called latifolia, or spike lavender. So you get the colour and the habit from the angustifolia, but you get the long stems, the branching on the stem, and most importantly, the beautiful heavy scent from the latifolia. And most of those taller ones are sterile. So it's our job as a grower and a breeder to introduce some fertility in. This is an increasingly popular lavender, the Sticus or French lavender. They're not quite as tough as the angustifolias, -5, so frost hardy, and it's the first to flower in the season, and it'll repeat flower if you just keep deadheading it.
Oh, this one's quite different. Look at this.
Yes, this is the beautiful Canariensis from the Canary Islands with filigree foliage, these long stems with trident flowers on the top. Unfortunately, not very tough, but you can shake seed out and pop that where you want it, and sometimes it'll just seed itself all over the bed.
Right, so in actual fact, you can have it year after year, but only 1 year at a time.
That's right.
I love this informal hedge here.
Yeah, they look beautiful with all those pastel shades, or of course, if you want those 2 pristine rows either side of a path, just one variety looks beautiful.
But the most important bit is brushing against it, isn't it?
It is. That releases the vapour from the glands that cover the plant. So there's some in the stem, the foliage, but most importantly are the calyces. These are the little pockets that the flowers pop out of.
Yeah.
And they're ribbed vertically, and in between the ribs are thousands of glands, like little jewels.
Although you love all sorts of lavenders, your real passion is to breed new varieties, isn't it?
It is. There's nothing more exciting than coming up with something new and revolutionary.
And how do you go about it?
So you'd have an angustifolia here, and just before the flowers pop out fully, you'd either just remove them or take the tips off the calyces. That allows the female to pop out.
Shoots out.
She shoots out, and then you rush over and get your male, which has got the pollen in. Just tickle him on the end, and that will be your new hybrid.
What is it you're after at the moment?
Well, I think the holy grail of breeding really is to get a short, dark, late-flowering lavender that still carries brilliant scent.
Yeah.
To be honest, whatever lavender you grow, it's great for the garden, brilliant for the body, and superb for the soul.
And once you've smelt a lavender, you just simply have to grow it in your garden.
You do, yes.
We have to grow most of our lavender in pots here, except in the dry garden. And you can see that this one, although not a particularly impressive example, is flowering nicely and doing perfectly okay. And I wouldn't want to prune that at this point. But this one here is a perfect example of being ready to prune. Flowers have gone over. It's not yet setting seed. You don't want to wait until the flowers are turned brown. Just as soon as they're past their best, cut it back. And you can cut as hard as you like, as long as you leave some new growth beneath the cutting point. So for example, you can see there's new growth here and here, so I want to cut above that. If you cut just down to bare wood, sometimes they don't regrow at all, and that's it, you lose them. So I'll just take that, cut into it, and the idea is to establish a nice compact shape without any of that legginess that you often get on lavenders. Right, that is now in a good state to put on a fresh flush of growth, an inch or two more, and that will provide a protective layer over winter. And then next spring, it'll be ready to form its flower buds coming out of a nice, well-shaped shrub. That's the pruning done, but here are some other jobs you can do this weekend.
To preserve the health and fruiting vigour of your strawberry plants, it's a good idea to renew them every few years. The easiest way to do this is to propagate runners. Choose the first plantlet on each runner and peg it either into the soil or into a pot filled with compost, and the easiest way to peg it is with a piece of bent wire. Leave it for about 3 to 4 weeks, and then you can cut it free from the parent and grow it on. It's easy to forget that a buddleia is a shrub that can be pruned to encourage repeat flowering, just like any other. As soon as the flowers are over, cut back to a side shoot, and this will encourage more flowers and therefore more butterflies to come into your garden right through into autumn. Tomatoes have grown well this summer, but to speed up the ripening of the fruit, take off all the leaves in the lower third of every plant. And this will let light in directly onto the fruits, and it will also improve ventilation and thus reduce the risk of tomato blight.
The rest of the garden is a busy place now. It's changing, it's moving, it's growing. But here in this long walk, it's calm. Very simple. It's just box and acanthus. This is Acanthus spinosus. And we do nothing to it really all year. We just wait for this moment when the acanthus comes into flower. And they last for a month or so. It's strong, simple, and I think really lovely. And by the way, all the acanthus plants were grown from just a couple of plants that we lifted from the jewel garden and took root cuttings from. Well, that's it for this week. Bye-bye.